Go into any major bookstore, or scroll through TikTok or Instagram, and you will find a massive, and growing, spiritual movement. Modern witchcraft. For millions of Americans, particularly women, the craft is a powerful, decentralized, nature-based spirituality. It's defined by feminism, empowerment, reverence for the earth, the cycles of the moon, herbs, and crystals. Its central guiding ethic, the Wiccan Rede, is a gentle one. And it harm none, do what the will. It feels ancient, peaceful, holistic, and overwhelmingly positive. Now I want you to hold that image in your mind. And picture this man, Aleister Crowley, known to the sensationalist, 1920s press as the wickedest man in the world. The Great Beast, 666, a man who defined his entire life by the motto, "Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law." He was a ceremonial magician, an occultist, a sexual libertine, a drug experimenter, a self-proclaimed prophet, and a man who deliberately cultivated an image of darkness, danger, and radical rebellion. These two things, the gentle, nature-worshipping Wiccan and the dark, libertine occultists, seem to be polar opposites. One is about harm none. The other is about do what thou wilt, regardless of convention. But what if I told you that these two are not opposites at all? What if I told you that modern, peaceful, feminist Wicca is the direct, linear, and undeniable offspring of Aleister Crowley's philosophy? What if I told you that the father of modern Wicca was, in fact, a direct disciple and follower of Crowley, who borrowed, adapted, and directly copied Crowley's magic to create his own witchcraft? The connection is not a vague influence, it is a direct line of descent. This is the hidden, complex, and for many, deeply uncomfortable, origin story of modern witchcraft. To understand the branch, you must first understand the root, and the root. Root is Aleister Crowley, 1875 to 1947. Crowley was not just a sensationalist headline grabber, though he was certainly that. He was a brilliant, wealthy, and deeply serious occult philosopher, poet, and mountaineer. His journey began, like many occultists of his day, in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a 19th-century British secret society that blended Jewish Kabbalah, tarot, astrology, and Egyptian mysticism. But Crowley was too rebellious for the Golden Dawn. He broke away, traveling the world, seeking his own system. His Sinai moment came in Cairo in 1904. While on a trip with his wife, he claimed to have made contact with a disembodied proto-human intelligence named Iwas. For 3 days, at a specific hour, he entered a trance state, and this entity dictated to him a short, cryptic, and poetic text. This text is known as Liber al-Vel Legis, or the Book of the Law. This book became the sacred scripture for an entire new religious philosophy that Crowley founded, called Thelema. The core principles of Thelema are contained in two famous, and often misunderstood phrases. 1. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. 2. Love is the law, love under will. The modern world hears do what you want and interprets it as hedonism, anarchy, anything goes. This is not what Crowley meant. For Crowley, do what thou wilt did not mean do whatever you feel like doing. It meant something far more difficult. It meant that each human has a single, unique, divine, true will, a preordained purpose or destiny. Your entire life's work, your great work, was to discover that one true will, through ritual, meditation, and magic. And then to do it, and nothing else, with absolute, focused intention. To do this, Crowley practiced magic. He added the K to differentiate it from stage magic. His system, which he practiced in his own occult order, the O, was a complex blend of Golden Dawn rituals, Egyptian mythology, and, most controversially, sex magic, the use of sexual energy and arousal as a fuel for performing magical rituals. Crowley was a professional rebel. He loved being the beast, 666. He loved shocking the establishment. But beneath the sensationalism was a deeply influential, if deeply complex, philosophical system. This is the source code. So, how does this dark, complex, ceremonial magic, created by a libertine in Cairo. Become witchcraft in the woods of England. For that, we need to meet our bridge figure, Gerald Gardner, 1884 to 1964. Gardner was a British civil servant, an amateur archaeologist and anthropologist who spent most of his life working in the Far East. He was a nudist, a folklorist, and absolutely obsessed with all things occult. When he retired and returned to England in the 1930s, he dove headfirst into the occult scene. And what was the coolest, most advanced occult scene in England? England at the time, it was the one centered on the ideas of the by then infamous Aleister Crowley. Now, Gardner's public story, the one he told the world, is this. In 1939, he was living near the New Forest in England. He claimed he was initiated into a secret, surviving hereditary coven of witches, who had supposedly been practicing their pre-Christian pagan nature religion in secret for centuries, hiding from the witch hunters. Gardner claimed that this ancient, dying coven chose him as their new leader and tasked him with preserving their old religion for the world. After the last witchcraft laws in England were repealed in 1951, he published his first non-fiction book, Witchcraft Today, and Gardnerian Wicca was born. It was presented as the authentic, ancient, pre-Christian faith of Europe. There's only one problem with this story. Almost no historian believes it. Historians like Ronald Hutton, who wrote the definitive academic study, The Triumph of the Moon, have meticulously searched the historical record. They find zero evidence for any New Forest coven, or any surviving, organized pagan witchcraft religion. The evidence strongly suggests that Gardner invented it. So, if the ancient hereditary coven was a convenient origin myth, where did Gardner really get his ideas for this new old religion? He got them from Aleister Crowley. The connection between Gardner and Crowley is not a theory. It is a direct, documented, historical link. In the 1940s, while formulating his new religion, Gerald Gardner was an initiated member of Aleister Crowley's OTO Ordo Templi Orientis. He and Crowley were in direct communication. Gardner was fascinated by Crowley's work and received a charter from Crowley himself to operate his own OTO lodge in England. When Gerald Gardner sat down to write the foundational rituals for his new Wiccan religion, the secret handwritten book, known as the Book of Shadows, he didn't just channel ancient folklore. He borrowed, adapted, and directly sanitized the ceremonial magic of Aleister Crowley. The evidence, when you compare the texts side by side, is undeniable. The Wiccan read, Gardner's famous gentle ethic, and it harm none, do what thou will, is a clear, direct echo of Crowley's do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Gardner's brilliant move was to add the ethical harm none clause, which is not found in Crowley. He took Crowley's radical freedom and house-trained it, making it socially acceptable. Ritual structure. The basic structure of a Gardnerian ritual: casting a magic circle, calling guardians to the four corners, invoking a god and goddesses, a simplified version of the ceremonial magic rituals taught by the Golden Dawn and Crowley. Direct plagiarism. Most damningly, key passages in Gardner's Book of Shadows, including the central charge of the goddess, are plagiarized, in some cases almost word for word, from Crowley's own published Gnostic Mass and other Thelemic texts. Gardner was a brilliant synthesizer. He did not invent Wicca from thin air. He took the dark, complex, individualistic ceremonial magic of Aleister Crowley and did something brilliant with it. He rebranded it. He mixed it with 1. Folklore. Ideas from folklorist Margaret Murray about a horned god of Europe. 2. Nature worship. A focus on the seasons, the sun and moon, and the wheel of the year. 3. A new ethics, his harm none rule. 4. A new origin story, the mythical New Forest Coven. He successfully sanitized Crowley, laundering the dark, libertine occultism into a seemingly ancient, peaceful, nature-based religion. He hid the controversial 20th century source, Crowley, behind the romantic, untraceable myth of an ancient coven. Gardner's invention, Wicca, was brought to the United States in the early 1960s by figures like Raymond Buckland. It remained a small, somewhat niche, coven-based religion for a while, but it exploded in the 1970s and 80s when it was discovered and embraced by second-wave feminism. Women in the feminist movement, who were often leaving patriarchal mainstream churches, Christianity, Judaism, were looking for a new spirituality. And what did they find? A religion that, unlike most, worshipped a goddess as supreme. However, these feminists also had a problem. Gardner's Wicca, while it worshipped a goddess, was still deeply hierarchical. It was run by a high priestess and a high priest. It involved ritual scourging and a focus on heterosexual polarity, the union of the god and goddess that many found to be just another form of male-dominated ritual. So, they reformed Wicca again. Feminist witches, like took Gardner's system and stripped it of its remaining hierarchy and dogma. They created eclectic witchcraft. You don't need a coven. You can be a solitary practitioner. You don't need a high priest. You can focus only on the goddess. You don't need to be initiated. You can initiate yourself. This is the version of witchcraft that has conquered the internet. The witch talk of today, with its focus on crystals, herbs, self-empowerment, and manifesting, is a descendant of Gardner's Wicca, which itself is a descendant of Crowley's Thelema. The chain is clear. Crowley Thelemic magic, Gardner Wicca sanitizes Crowley. Starhawk eclectic witchcraft sanitizes Gardner. The modern peaceful witch on TikTok, practicing self-love and harm none, is almost certainly, without knowing it, a direct spiritual heir to the wickedest man in the world. The link is almost completely invisible, but it is the structural and philosophical DNA of their entire practice. This brings us to the final, and deeply uncomfortable, debate. Modern, peaceful, feminist nature-worshipping witchcraft is the direct, linear descendant of the ritual magic of Aleister Crowley, a man widely seen as an arrogant, misogynistic, and amoral dark occultist. This is deeply challenging for many modern practitioners, and it's the source of a massive debate within the pagan community itself. On one side, argument A, the poisoned root view. This argument, often made by conservative Christians and by rival occult groups, is that the river of Wicca is irrevocably poisoned by its source. It argues that you cannot simply rebrand Crowley. His philosophy of do what thou wilt is, at its core, a form of satanic individualism and moral relativism. In this view, Gardner's harm none is just a thin, sugary coating on a dark, libertine, and self-centered philosophy. The poisoned root, they argue, is still there, making the entire movement spiritually dangerous or philosophically bankrupt. On the other side, argument B, the redeemed river view. This is the view of most modern Wiccans and witches. It argues that a river's source does not determine the quality of its water downstream. Ideas evolve. They argue that Gardner's harm none clause is not a minor addition. It is the fundamental correction that redeems Crowley's philosophy. It takes the useful part of Crowley's message, individual empowerment, true will, and places it firmly within an ethical, compassionate framework. They argue that modern witchcraft has successfully reformed and transcended its flawed origins, keeping the empowerment while aggressively rejecting the darkness and ego of its founder. So, what do you think? Is modern witchcraft just Crowley light? A self-centered religion of do what thou wilt, dangerously disguised in a cloak of flowers and incense? Or is it a genuine, modern, spiritual movement that successfully redeemed the useful parts of a problematic philosopher's work, transforming them into something new, positive, and empowering? Can a belief system ever truly escape its founder? Let me know your thoughts, respectfully, in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the hidden history of modern witchcraft fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our beliefs. Thanks for watching.